This video is brought to you by AudioQuest, makers of the Dragonfly range of USB DACs. Click to AudioQuest.com for more information.
One thing that I love to do here in Berlin on the weekend is go to Fleamarket, which is basically the German word for flea markets. And there's one great one right next to the Tiergarten S-Bahn. There's another really good one right next to Museum Island. And I go to these flea markets to buy second-hand records because there's usually a couple of sellers at each on Saturday and sometimes Sunday. Recently, I have been on quite the spree. I found a Sugarcubes album from the 80s. A lot of these flea market stalls are full of 80s records and 70s records, but I did manage to find an original copy of Songs for Drella by Lou Reed and John Cale. Here's something from the early 90s. I guess we used to call this indie pop or indie. The Kitchens of Distinctions, Strange Free World. The great album. Changes Bowie, also from 1990. This is the album that kicked off the Ryko reissue program that year and also his Sound Division tour. This 2LP set features 2 extra tracks that are not on the CD. And then lastly, which I think was the best find for me, but this is actually a reissue from Music on Vinyl, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. This is a Leonard Cohen cover version album. This was the original one to come out before the one that had Sting and other people on it. This one's got the Pixies, REM. It's got a completely batshit version of Tower of Song by Nick Cave on here as well. And a very, very, cool version of Who by Fire by the House of Love. Fantastic record. However, one of the big issues, the big challenges in buying records secondhand at a flea market is the dust and dirt that builds up on the record surface over the years, either naturally or through mishandling. And when you have a nice turntable with a good cartridge fitted and you've got a nice hi-fi system, you don't really dig all the surface noise that is generated by that buildup of dust and dirt. And today we look at what we can do about that dust and dirt and therefore hopefully deal with the surface noise that it creates. Now, I've owned a couple of record cleaning machines in the past. Here in Berlin, I've owned a Pro-Ject VC-S record cleaning machine, which is a vacuum-based model. And it has a face that only a mother could love. And it's very, very much a hands-on process. And that means we have to put the fluid onto the record surface and turn it around and work it into the record's grooves with a brush. And I'm not always convinced that the cleaning fluid gets into those grooves, because a record's groove is somewhere between 0.04 millimeters and 0.08 millimeters thick. Just tiny. I mean, it's roughly the width of a human hair. And I no longer own that Pro-Ject VC-S record cleaning machine. I sold it because I never used it, because it was just such a labor-intensive process. It took about 15 minutes to clean and dry one record, and I always had to be there. There was no automation at all, and it was noisy. So yeah, I got rid of it, I sold it. The Degritter record cleaning machine is made in Estonia. It first came to market as a Kickstarter campaign, but has since evolved to a full retail product. Now this is not like the Pro-Ject cleaning machine, not at all. This is what's called an ultrasonic record cleaner, and it uses a process called cavitation. Now what that means is that the inside here is a 300-watt amplifier that powers 4 different transducers, 2 per side of the record. And its frequency generates millions and millions of tiny bubbles. And when those bubbles explode, hopefully inside the record's groove, that energy dislodges dust and dirt from the record's grooves. At least that's the theory. So this Degritter does not contain an off-the-shelf ultrasonic cleaning module, which normally operates somewhere around 40 kilohertz. This one has a module that operates at 120 kilohertz. And that means we get much smaller bubbles, which obviously then are much more likely to get into the grooves of the records. So once the water is drained away from the sort of cavitation bath that takes place inside this machine, it is filtered before it goes back into the reservoir tank. And that filter is actually on the side here. You can remove it, you can clean it. And the Degritter, its software interface will tell us when that filter needs cleaning, and it won't let us use the machine normally to clean records until we've cleaned it. And it will also tell us when we need to change the water in the reservoir tank. So everything inside this machine is run by software, and the firmware is upgradable. We can download a new one from the Degritter website, write it to an SD card, insert that SD card into the back, reboot the machine, and it will install that new firmware, which I think is pretty cool. The great thing about having this sort of software interface is that the Degritter gives us 3 different water level settings depending on how close we want to get to the label at the middle of the record, how close the record's grooves run to that label. I have never, not once in using this, seen the liquid run onto the label, not at all. We also get 20 different drying settings. So you could have a longer drying time, but with a much quieter fan noise. Or you could just endure 3 minutes of very high level fan noise, so a shorter drying time. Now also inside this machine is an array of sensors which will report back to the operating system, which will then tell us through this little display here if there is insufficient water in the reservoir tank, or if the reservoir tank has not been seated properly. And we don't fill the reservoir tank here with normal tap water, which is a good thing because water in Berlin is unbelievably hard. It's so hard that we have to put a special liquid inside our dishwashers and sometimes our washing machines to protect those machines from the buildup of calc, because it can wreck them. Anyway, inside the tank here, we have to use distilled water, and we mix it with a few drops of this record cleaning fluid supplied by Degritter. And we also have to degas that water before we start. There's an option on the menu system here, look, degas right there. If I click play on there, it will degas the water. So how about we take this Sugarcubes record and clean it right here, right now, using the Degritter. Now what we're going to do is we just have to drop it into the slot over here. You can see there's a bit of movement there, but it's perfectly secure. Nothing untoward will happen. And then all I have to do is select my cleaning program on the menu system here. I'm going to go with a quick one here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click play. Once I click play, the machine pulls some of the distilled water from the reservoir tank into the cleaning tank inside here, so around the record at the bottom underneath, and eventually it will start turning it backwards and forwards a little bit, and we'll see the cleaning fluid on the record. Well, I say cleaning fluid, it's basically this cleaning fluid mixed with distilled water, and you can see it starting there. And you can see we've got 7 minutes to run. Now the beauty of this machine is it's all automatic. I don't have to do anything else. It will clean it and it will dry it. So I can go off now and make a cup of coffee. So see you later. All right, got some coffee. Pretty good. It's done. It has cleaned the Sugarcubes record. It took about 7 minutes. We now have a nice clean record. And I can look at that and think, yeah, that's pretty good. And I know that the machine is cleaning records because I see what's on the filter when I have to clean it. And I see how brown and dirty the reservoir water is when I have to empty that out. Obviously, when we clean a record, we don't put it back in its old inner sleeve. We take a nice shiny new one and put that in there. So it has a new inner sleeve. And then I put the original inner sleeve obviously back in the record. Don't throw that away, keep that because it's a printed one. Marvelous. Now obviously the Degritter will not remove any scratches. It's just here to remove dust and dirt and other detritus. Now we have to ask ourselves, does this make the record any quieter to listen to? I've already done John Cale and Lou Reed's songs for Drella, and we recorded the sound of the run-in groove as it comes out of the loudspeakers, so the surface noise. We did that before the clean and after the clean. So what did you think? Did you think it was quieter or not? Let us know in the comments below. Those of you that saw the video about the records that I bought in Portugal will remember this one. This is the Orb picture disc from the early 90s. And the picture disc side looks kind of nice. And then the playable side, allegedly, is fully gunked up with some fairly sticky kind of residue. I don't know what it is. I did try and clean this, first on a quick clean, then on a heavy clean. And I did try and do a before and after, so we did try and film that. But this has had 2 cleans and it's still pretty much gunked up. So there are some records that the Degritter won't touch. Kitchens of Distinction, arguably the best band name ever. This has kind of got a bit of a sort of Cocteau Twins flavour to it. And you can see that this is already in a new inner sleeve. So I've cleaned this already. So here is the sound of the run-in groove before we cleaned it. Now here is the sound of the running groove after we cleaned it with the Degritter. What do you think? Again, let us know in the comment section below. I think that the Degritter makes the running groove and most of this record a little bit quieter, and I think any residual noise comes from either scratches inside the groove caused by any sort of dust and dirt and detritus. But I'm not really convinced that this before and after footage of the running groove really shows that the Degritter does a much better job than, say, the Pro-Ject vacuum machine that I used to use and then eventually gave up on because it was such a pain in the ass to use and sold it. But here's a very crucial finding, well, at least for me. Of the 60 or so records that I've cleaned with this Degritter, I would never say that it made a dramatic improvement to the sound of my records. No veil was lifted, nobody got blown out of the water. And that's as true for new records as it is for old, because some people say if you clean new records, it can improve their sound quality. I'm not saying that isn't possible, I'm just saying that I didn't hear it. So my focus with this Degritter has been to improve the surface noise or reduce the surface noise of records. Now, so far, we've only really shown you the sound of the running groove. Why is that? Well, because when the music starts, I run the risk of a copyright strike because I am not cleared to play Lou Reed and John Cale or the Kitchens of Distinction or the Sugarcubes. However, I am cleared for a chap called Calibre, who lives in Berlin. This is his 2019 ambient album, Planet Hearth. And the reason I chose this record is because it's ambient, and therefore any surface noise would be highly, highly intrusive. So if you'll excuse the pun, we now come to the spicy finding of this video, because we took the Calibre record, we took it to the kitchen, we loaded it up with cumin and paprika, or paprika, depending on where you live in the world, smeared it all over the record surface, then shook some of the loose stuff off and rubbed it off into the sink, but it was still pretty much caked on by the time we brought it to the Degritter. I ran it through the Degritter twice, first on a quick, then on a heavy, so basically about 20 minutes of cleaning. And you could hear, I think, with the ABs that we just played, you can hear that it did a great job in cleaning out those grooves of all that spicy stuff. It wasn't noisy at all. I was actually surprised by that because I've never done that before. We just did that for this video. And I think the Degritter did a great job in cleaning that Calibre record. In the run-in groove, I think it's now even quieter because there were a couple of rotational clicks before we cleaned it. Not so afterwards. Now we have to ask, who is this machine for? Clearly, it is not for somebody already very happy with their manual cleaning process. And clearly, it is not for somebody who insists that the only way to clean a vinyl record is first in a bath of rhino urine, and then in a separate bath of dolphin's tears, and then a 43-minute drying process using only an angel's breath. It's not for people like that, for idealists. Nope. The Degritter is clearly for somebody who does not enjoy the manual process of many more affordable cleaning machines. This has a one-click operation. It is immensely satisfying to use and also to watch. To that end, this record cleaning machine is for somebody like me who wants to keep it permanently on display near their turntable because it's an attractive piece of hardware. Because having this here in my lounge room made me want to clean every record that I bought from one of the flea markets on the weekend. The Degritter is for somebody who cares about aesthetics because it doesn't look like a science experiment stuck in its prototype phase. It looks good, it feels good to use. Neither is it a vacuum cleaner in a box, like the Pro-Ject that I sold. But at 2,700 euros, this thing is clearly not for everybody. It's only for a very niche section of an already small niche, that's the hi-fi world. This is for somebody who's got a nice turntable, who has a nice cartridge, who has a sizable used record collection, or for somebody like me who buys a lot of used records. But most importantly, it's for somebody who is comfortable spending this kind of money. Or perhaps this is for 2 or 3 vinyl heads who live close to each other and they can share the ownership and they can share the cost, 900 euros each, move it around every few months. That seems like a good plan. I have to apologize to Degritter, the company, because it's taken me an awful long time to get to filming this video. I received this unit, I think, either last August or last September. So that's a long time, but I've used this more than any other record cleaning machine that I've ever used. I've cleaned more records with this in a few months than I did with 2 or 3 years of Pro-Ject VC-S ownership. And that's saying something. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a like down below. If you don't like it, well, you know what to do. If you like my attitude towards high-end audio in that I will cover niche stuff sometimes. And yes, some of that niche stuff is very expensive. But hopefully, if you're mature enough, you won't be offended or outraged by that. You'll just be like, this isn't for me. And that's really the reaction that I would expect most people to have to this. It's like, well, this is not really for me. But to the right buyer, to the right vinyl head, or somebody who's really into vinyl, this is absolute gold for them, I think. So if you dig that, then please subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. This is a Leonard Coven. Now, this is not my first rodeo. This Degritter record cleaning machine, come to that. Now, this does not feature an... Why can't I talk? Let's try this again. Supposedly, theoretically, generates much... No, let me do that again. We think we need to move these records, don't we? We also have to use a few drops of the cleaning fluid. That didn't go very well, did it? But I don't think these video clips really show very clearly that the Degritter does a much better job than, say, the Pro-Ject. Now, so far, I've only been... I think it makes... You can see that this has got an auto off. Oh, you done?